Thank you again for joining me on the Sutherland Report. It's a real privilege to have your company. And I continue in my political series where I am interviewing parliamentary candidates for Reform UK. And I have the absolute pleasure in bringing on the candidate for Swansea West in that amazing country of Wales. And I'm going to bring on Patrick Benham-Crosswell, and we will have our usual geography lesson and get into a discussion. Patrick, delighted to meet you via the digital medium, sir. So thank you very much for your time this morning.
No problem, Mark. It's very good to meet you too, or whatever.
Brilliant.
Let's just hope the technology holds up.
Well, we're going to work at it, sir. So I'll put up my usual UK map for my international viewers, and then we'll start the quick geography lesson and lead into your constituency. So here we are, the map of the UK. And I think, Patrick, to be fair, if we focus on Liverpool and then go straight down to that wonderful piece of blue water that's coming in regard to that inlet there, and then let's come down to our map of Wales. We can see see Liverpool above there, puts us in context. But this is the constituency. So if you describe whereabouts this is and its makeup, that'd be fantastic. So here we are, Swansea.
Well, Swansea West is actually mostly the eastern part of Swansea. The boundary commission lines down here are a bit complicated. And we're on the side of the River Tor. The Welsh and Swansea's Avator. It's an old industrial city, 250,000 people. It now has the university. It's next door to Port Talbot Steelworks, which has had some problems. And it's been a Labour stronghold for a long time.
In regard to the Port Talbot, let's hold that. I want to bring that up in discussion with you because this is very, very important. So, Patrick, why have you stepped forward in regard to becoming a parliamentary candidate for Reform UK in the Swansea area? Why have you taken that to move?
Well, I stepped up to become a parliamentary candidate because it became clear to me that politics is badly broken, possibly irretrievably so, mostly by the emergence of professional politicians who sometimes have to put career considerations ahead of actually doing their job, and particularly the case with Welsh politicians in Westminster, and we'll come to that. So that was why I stood forward. You see something's broken, step up, fix it. Why Swansea West? Well, I have wanted to move to Wales for a long time. I've been a member of the business club. I'm here for getting on for 7 or 8 years now. But it's been complicated moving here because of COVID, other work commitments, this, that, and the other. But I was given the opportunity to apply for the seat. I did all the interviews and I got the job. And I'm delighted to have it. One of the things you can do while you're tramping the streets, leafleting, is you can also do a spot of house hunting.
I hear you, Patrick. It's good. It's good to know that you are multitasking in that way, sir, but in a very positive way. So that's brilliant. Patrick,
well, indeed, I'm not.
I'm going to say, Patrick, what percentage? And I'm sorry about the lag, but we are going to push through with the internet challenge. We'll continue to do that. But Patrick, what percentage of people voted to remain in the EU in 2016 in your era and in your area, and what percentage voted out? To put you on the spot with a figure.
Okay, funny enough, it's not. Swansea is a very split city. In some of the wards, the vote to leave was 67%. In other wards, notably closer to the university, the vote to leave was 45%. This is one of the, Swansea is in many ways the epitome of what's wrong. There's the self-appointed elite who think one thing, and it's working for them. And there's the majority who didn't actually pick the elite, who think something else, and it's definitely not working for them.
I hear you. So You're out on the
I think overall the Swansea vote was about 54% leave. They'd averaged out.
right, because unless I'm wrong, Wales as a country, the rate of voting to leave was quite high across the constituencies in Wales. Unless I've got that wrong, but I think it was quite high.
Yes, I think it was. Even though I was typically perversely Welsh, I think Wales was also the recipient of the most money from the EU. But that was a few years ago now, and the problems have moved on. And I'm sorry to say that things have got worse.
Yeah, I hear you. So, Patrick, you're out and about. I know you're busy leafleting and knocking on doors, expressed in our wonderful email exchange. So, what concerns are constituents bringing to you? I mean, you mentioned Port Talbot works from straight up, but what concerns are the constituents bringing to you? Can people easily get appointments for their GPs? What other infrastructure? What about crime? Are they concerned whether there's enough policemen and women on the streets? What concerns are they bringing to you, sir?
It varies enormously from ward to ward. There are all the usual problems associated with decay, so drugs, minor violence, crime. In the plusher areas on the lovely Wynn Street, there's a fantastic police presence there. People party and get drunk and behave with usually actually great bonhomie without a problem. The problem's simple. There's not enough money. The city isn't wealthy enough. There isn't enough work. There aren't enough jobs. There's an issue with migrants being imposed, and they're just adding to the housing challenge here. There's an issue with not enough wealth, and that's something I'd like to explore because Wales gets more money per head than any other part of the United Kingdom.
Right. So, so as you've said, crime, the issues with that, it's very interesting because some of the regular sort of questions I'm asking other people that I'm having the privilege to interview, but are people finding that it's difficult, especially after what we've been through over the last few years, to get access to GPs? What are the state of the hospitals? What are the state of other infrastructure issues that could be compounding on the constituents there?
Okay, the police are doing as good as a job as they can. They're doing it with a great deal more charm than, say, the Metropolitan Police. I was talking to one of them yesterday, and they said, wherever you are, there's always crime. Wherever it's poor, there's usually more. She should have been a poet. The hospitals and the health service in Wales are a disgrace. They're underfunded, and waiting times are ridiculous. Health generally is pretty poor, and that's the function, again, I said, of not that there isn't enough government money sloshing around in Wales, that it's being misspent.
When you say it's being misspent, where is it being misspent? What are they doing? What are they doing with that money?
Well, apart from paying for Mr. Gessling to fly to India first class, so to ask Tata not to close Port Talbot. Yeah. They've gone big on climate change. 50%, almost 50%, no, in fact, over 50% of the capital spending in Wales is booked under climate change. I have no idea what that is actually delivering, but that's almost 5 times as much as they spend on building hospitals, and therein is your answer to the NHS problem in Wales.
Climate change,
and probably to a bit of the policing and transport problems.
Right, Patrick, describe what's happening with Port Talbot, please, because the bottom line is this: you take out big industry like that, it has an impact on the other, of course, shops, the communities around. The money then disappears, so there isn't the money to then spend to support the community. So where are we at with Port Talbot? Could you describe what Port Talbot is, steel manufacturing, etc.? Can you just talk into that situation, please?
Sure. Okay, so Port Talbot. So Port Talbot is one of the last steel plants in the UK, and because the cost of compliance with emissions is so high, it's having to shut the coking plants that feed its blast furnaces. Blast furnaces are the only way to make steel from iron ore, and the ones in Port Talbot are the last in the UK. So every bit of new steel that we need, we will be importing. There's all sorts of discussions about why this is and why it wasn't. It's a matter of record that the Labour Party tried to get Port Talbot to delay the announcement, which is effectively trampling over employment law and companies' rights. The net result is that 3,000 jobs have been lost, many of them in Port Talbot, which is in an adjacent constituency to mine, but many of them live in Swansea West. And as you say, there goes the money, there goes the economy.
But also, when you're saying about we will have to be in a position when we're going to have to import steel, let's follow that thought. So where will that steel be made, which is the distance, and then how is it then being transported, and then how do these people that believe on all this climate change policy rhetoric, how do I justify that with the impact of that transportation on the climate? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, it will be made overseas. I mean, steel's made as a global product, and they don't. British users the steel will buy it for the best price they can from whichever supplier. But it's going to be, it could be from Germany, it could be from the United States, it could be from India or China. But the point is that making steel is messy and it involves burning coke, and therefore the emissions per ton of new steel are the same pretty much wherever you go. And as you rightly say, if you've got to move it a long way, it's heavy stuff, so you've got to ship it. Your steel miles will go higher. Your cost will go higher. Worse than that, the money you spent on the steel will go to the pockets of foreign companies and foreign countries. That money won't be available to be profits in the UK or even wage packets in the UK. And if you like, the world is a global market, obviously, but we've taken globalization too far. We are now exporting so much money that we're stagnating. It's blindingly obvious to anyone who hasn't got a degree in economics. Or well, maybe a proper economist has, but those with degrees in PPE aren't. Why are we doing this? I mean, it beggars belief. Ed Miliband came up with a net zero policy. Funny enough, when my opponent here, Torsten Bell, was one of his fronties. He came up with a policy back in the noughties. Theresa May implemented it by statutory order. We've never had a vote on it, and it's being imposed, I guess, to assuage the fears of a troubled Swedish teenager. Net zero in the UK will not change the outcome of the planet at all. And in fact, there's an IPCC report, which paragraph, I know this off the top of my head, paragraph D1.6 states that even if the world was net negative by 2050, the impacts of climate change will continue for between decades and millennia. Which says to me even more that one, I'm not entirely sure that model is particularly brilliant if it can only forecast the duals of magnitude. Well, that's like a speed camera that says you might have been doing 2 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, 200 miles an hour. Or maybe we can come to that. We're engaged on this futile thing because it appeals to local, it appeals to some supposed intellectuals sitting in Westminster. I mean, Torsten Bell sat there the other day at a climate action meeting saying that Labour would deliver a carbon-free grid by 2030. It's a blatant lie or blatantly not knowing his numbers, because the simple fact is to do that, you'd have to build 5 sizes power stations in 5 years. It's taken 30 years to build the first one. It's not possible, and it's cost a fortune. On current industry estimates are 100, 200, 300 billion. This was leaked in the to the Telegraph this morning. Even Labour knows this stuff. And so, the net result, Torsten says it will create 27,000 jobs in Wales. Well, so far it's lost 3,000. It's an absolute idiocy, and it's a disgrace that we haven't had a vote and a grown-up discussion on it. I hate the word grown-up, an adult discussion on it. And Reform is the only party that's questioning this. That tells you everything about the state of British politics, and it's why I'm, some personal inconvenience and cost, putting my hat in the ring.
Good for you. I mean, you, Patrick, you've said there's two names you've named there. You then talk about Ed Miliband, which is rather interesting when we look back at history. We look back at the roots of someone's politics, which are then communism. Then if we then think of Theresa, Ed Miliband, who is Labour, and as I mentioned earlier, that there's a communist background. And then you've mentioned Theresa May, who would call herself a conservative, the woman that was then became Prime Minister after David Cameron. And she's a conservative, and then she pushed through all of this net zero stuff. And I would point people in the direction of Agenda 21, Agenda 30, any comments on the fourth industrial revolution. But you've made a very, 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 very vital point. You and I have not been asked about this, and nor have the residents, any citizens within the UK. And something is being imposed. So if you then impose all of this stuff, and people haven't got money as it is, then how are they going to heat their homes? How are they going to create wealth to actually heat their homes, etc.? So deeply concerning. In regard to Port Talbot, Patrick, would you agree with me that if you get rid of the infrastructure to actually be able to make steel as a country yourself, to stand independently, where it's then rather dangerous for us to be reliant on other people and imports? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thought is, if only it was just steel. I mean, yes, you're right. If you can't make primary steel, then well, for a country that used to make its own tanks, but doesn't anymore. Not being able to make steel, obviously, it's a key material, it's a strategic material, and it's one less bargaining chip that you hold in any negotiation. But it's worse than that. To make the steel, you need coal. Or if you try to open a coal mine in the UK, fat chance. I mean, someone's managed to do it up in Cumbria for a very limited purpose, but that'll get shut down. So net result, we import coal, and we can believe it. Here we are in Wales, sitting on top of God knows how much coal, importing it. You mentioned heating houses. We're importing gas. 85% of domestic heating is done by gas or whatever. At the moment, the recent judgment about the oil field in the Surrey Weald means that the chances of further development of the North Sea, or indeed shale gas, mean that we're going to be reliant on other people for giving us gas. Well, why should they? Ed and Torsten will tell you, well, we'll all be electric then. Forget how they make electricity for a moment. We then got to be able to say, well, okay, if you're going to heat people's houses electrically with heat pumps, there's 23 million houses with the heat pump industry can install 60,000 a year at the moment. That's 400 years' work. And you've got to get the heat pumps. And the houses weren't designed for them. So some people, it's not just going to be a heat pump, they're going to have to resize their radiators. Nightmare coming with a lot of cost. But even if you did that, there's still a thing called, the old Google flash, when it's dark and the wind don't blow. In Northern Europe, they last about 100 hours. I had a little look, played with some numbers. At current prices, to install enough batteries just to run house heating on heat pumps, the cost of that is £1.4 trillion. That's half the national debt. And we're currently going down to Swansea for 100 billion a year. It makes no sense at all. It is not possible. It won't change the future of the planet. All it can guarantee is that a cold, wet country will get cold, wet, and miserable. And cold, wet people die. Net zero is going to kill people. It's going to kill the usual suspects: the old, the infirm, the very young, and the poor. It's an absolute disgrace. And if you say anything about it, climate denier. Climate changes. Ask a dinosaur. Question is, carbon dioxide no doubt contributes to it, but this lunacy is not the solution. Cheaper and easier, build flood defences.
Well, one of the beauties of trees, and I don't apologize for this science lesson or my views, but the fact is, trees take in CO2. They then create a special gas called oxygen, which enables you and I to have a conversation and to actually breathe and talk. And if you go back in history, you could argue the more CO2, the bigger trees love it, the greener that we are. And we are considerably a green and pleasant land. And the fact that it's how we define, I'm not saying that the climate isn't changing, that naturally moves up and down. And if people may disagree, may agree with us, but when you are talking, Patrick, about people dying, freezing to death, etc., this is rather concerning, and those people cannot answer that. And you're right, we have resources under our soil, loads of coal, there is gas, etc. If people are worried about sending people down the coal mines, I appreciate that. We can then get into robot technology, we can get into carbon capture, etc. It's absolute lunacy. And for any civilization to progress, we need cheap energy. I tell people to read books like Rupert Darwell, Green Tyranny, etc. Patrick, sorry, that's the end of my sort of political party broadcast on behalf of the whole climate discussion of lunacy, because it is communism, the way I see it, and it is control. We've seen enough of that over the last few years. So, Patrick, sorry, sir.
Sorry, I was going to say, it doesn't really. I regard it as totalitarian, and it's all over one. With Boris Johnson locking us all up because he panicked. The entire media saying he should lock us down more when the data is coming out that actually Sweden, which didn't lock down, did better.
Absolutely.
And we had, there was the media saying at one stage that the best prime ministers were the female ones because they locked up their people for more. I mean, that's the media. Give me a break.
I agree with you, and we have to say these things. I mean, it may not make us very popular, but these things have to be said. So, Patrick, what other concerns are your constituents bringing to you? Because if we talk about young people who we value, they are the future of this country. What are the opportunities for them educationally in your area? You understandably talk about University of Swansea. What about? Go on, sir.
Funnily enough, it seems to be a lot of young people telling me they're ready to vote in Reform. In fact, I haven't met a single young person who hasn't told me they're voting Reform. Everyone's worried about getting an education, but because the education money's been spent on climate change. They're worried about the cost of going to university, which Reform solves simply by saying it's interest free. There will be no more payments, and that will be retrospective, and that will be immediate. That's for the average student or the average graduate. That's the saving of some £2,000 to £4,000 a year, which they might be able to put towards buying a house, which is where Reform is, I think, attractive. Saying, do you know what? We're going to sort out house building, which is not difficult unless you're reliant on house builders for funding your political parties. And of course, by controlling or effectively eliminating migration, we'll automatically reduce demand for housing, so people will find it easier to get up with it. And the final thing we're doing, which is so blindingly obvious that it's astonishing that no government's ever done it, is we're lifting the tax threshold spectacularly. We're lifting it to £20,000 a year, which means many poor people, or many people of low income, will be taken completely out of paying tax. It's something like another £2,000 a year in their pockets to spend on food, on childcare, possibly on going out and having a good time. But much of that is local. So we're creating, we're rebuilding a broken economy and a broken system from the ground up, because it's from the ground up that it matters. I mean, there's an old farmer's saying that, the best fertilizer on, is the farmer's leather boots walking around the field. Because you go out, you see what's happening, and you fix it from the bottom up. Well, as a soldier, you go out, you see what happens, you brick things, and you fix it from the bottom up. And that's what reform is all about. I mean, I hate to say it, but in some of the less prosperous walks, reform's the only hope they've got.
I hear you. Patrick, do people, in many ways you've answered it, but it'd be interesting to hear your opinion. Do people feel that there's a disconnect with their lives on the ground in Swansea West, in that part of Wales, to London? Do they feel that London is on a completely different planet? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yes, London's a very long way away. I mean, for any Londoners watching, if you go down the Cromwell Road and turn into the M4, keep on going, and when you run out of motorway, you found Swansea. Yes, it is, and so is Cardiff. Cardiff's become its own little political centre. Wales has had 30 years of Labour government. Wales knows what it's going to be like if Starmer gets anything like a majority. And the things they're talking about him getting, it's understandable how he's going to get it, but it's not good news. And that, I think, is why I think I'm going to get quite a big vote. I think there's an increasing chance I could win it. The electoral calculator has taken me off 0% to 2% this week, or whatever. I think their model's wrong. We talk about models. And if I lose, I want Torsten to go back to the other station and mate, you did not have a walkover. Your majority was reduced. Your party machine got you some votes, but don't go thinking you've got a mandate for even half the stuff you want to do. The challenge for Wales is that it's long been a lost zone from Tories, so it's of no interest to them. And by the same token, with Plaid, the Labour Plaid coalition, Wales is safe seats. So when you have a Labour government, a Labour politician, this is going to go to the Senate, the Welsh Senate, say, hang about, we send you 84% of the money comes from Westminster. Show me what you spent it on. Why have you subsidised climate change rather than building hospitals? Why are you worrying about wind turbines when you should be putting police on the street, sorting out education? Possibly first time I came through Wales was when I was a young officer in a Welsh regiment, and we're going down by train to Castlemartin on a diesel train, and with our tanks. And then the conversation was, it'll all be electrified in 10 years. 40 years later, and the electricity still hasn't got to Swansea. I mean, how hard can it be? The whole system is broken, and Wales is feeling the pain. And it's feeling it more than anyone else because it's had Labour government for more than anyone else. I suppose the only good governmental thing in Wales is at least they didn't get Nicola Sturgeon, but Mark Drakeford was easily as much as a Pratt. But the lunacy of the lockdown measures imposed, drunk with power, but stuck in everyone's memory.
Well, absolutely. And also then within Parliament, you then had Starmer et al. Asking for, stronger lockdowns and extremist along those lines. Patrick, how can people reach you? I think this would be a really good point for emails, social media. How can they reach out to you, to speak to you, to help you, to step forward, to help you in your campaign, sir?
Fine. They can. Unfortunately, I've got a name that Google's rather effectively. There aren't too many of me. They can find me by my website, www.swansea-west.uk. They can find me on Facebook as Reform UK Swansea West. Or first of all, then come and find me in the street. I'm out and about. I'll be mostly in Morriston. On the hustings more widely, there's only been one that I've been invited to, which was the Climate Action Network. Everyone turned up apart from the Tory, but then if you were a Tory around here, you wouldn't. In terms of media coverage, I got some off Cymru Wales, Cymru Nation, which was fine. Then all of a sudden, yesterday, BBC phoned up, BBC Wales, and said, "Can you give us an interview?" Spoke to the journalist, and I said, "Why are you here? And what's this about?" And she said, "I don't know. We've never had to do one of these at a safe Labour seat before." So I suspect that they're seeing data, or Labour are sharing data that says that Swansea West is no longer a safe Labour seat. Other than that, I think I've spent a total of 150 quid or so on Facebook advertising, and rather more than that on leaflets. There's not much you can do other than, with no budget, other than get out, pound the streets, and meet people. Is it working? Yes. I started with a team of 4. Now I've got a team of 20, and that's because people meet and want to help. I'm getting a lot more advice and a lot more feedback. Reform's membership in Swansea has now more than doubled in 2.5 weeks. And there's some data on sort of internet activity. I can't quote it, but it's a chart that's on the internet somewhere, showing that despite spending nothing, the internet is all full of stuff about reform. So it's very exciting. And yeah, you just got to do what you do. There's only one certain thing: if I stop talking, I won't get votes.
I hear you. So, Patrick, could you remind people where they can find you? And I'd say, is there anything else that you would like to say? We've talked about Paul Talbot. We've talked about the whole climate change issue. We've talked about the pressure on Wales, but actually, we want to see jobs. We want to see wealth created there. So, is there anything else you want to say? And also, just remind people how they can reach you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: if we don't change the way Wales and UK politics are going, we're in for a really, really tough time. There's only one way you can change that, and that's vote for something different. That is me. You can find me www.swansea-west.uk. I'm on Facebook, Reform UK Swansea West, or you can Google my name and it will be me. There is hope. There is a chance of fixing it, but think carefully what you're voting for on the 4th of July.
Is one of the challenges you think you have is voter apathy, or is that barometer changing where people seem more enthusiastic? As you've said, Reform UK membership has doubled, but do you think that there is more enthusiasm for people to actually say we've actually got to get out and vote?
I think, and the conversations I've had, and there's not much insight here, but it seems to me that if you're a diehard Tory, you're not. You might vote, you might not. Here in Swansea West, it doesn't make a difference. What would make a difference if you were a Tory was if you voted Reform, because it's a question of stopping Starmageddon, which Torsten Bell was one of the, is one of the architects of those policies. I detect absolutely no enthusiasm in Labour at all for this election. And I think a lot of them are going to stay at home. And of course, that works for me because there is huge enthusiasm for reform. Every Labour vote that stays at home is one less for me to have to get. Every Labour voter who votes for me is two less that I have to get. As it stands at the moment on the electoral calculus data, I need to get 7,000 more Labour votes. That's actually doable. It's actually doable.
I hear you. Patrick, I just want to thank you for giving me the privilege of your time and joining me. And we apologise to everyone for the internet challenges, which are those internet challenges also happen in other parts of the country, which says about the infrastructure that we need to address. But Patrick, thank you so much for joining me, and stay with me. I'll say goodbye to you officially on the other side, but thank you very much for your time.
But absolutely, that's what it's all about, getting the message out. Thank you very much for the investment and building this facility.
Great. Cheers.
Yes.
Speak to you soon. All the best with your campaign, sir. Thank you for being with me, and I'll see you in the next interview.